This is Rachel Dworkin at the Chemung County Historical Society. Today is December 4th, 2020, and I am here interviewing
Randy Reid.
Okay, and this is for the COVID Memory Project. Randy, you ran for office this year, and I know you've run for office in previous years. Can you tell us a little bit about this time running and how it was different?
Right. So I ran for New York State Assembly in the 124th Assembly District. This year in 2020, I was the Democratic nominee. I had ran previously in 2018 and lost in the primary back then. And then I was able to secure the nomination this year and ran against Assemblyman Chris Friend. And so it was different in that you were dealing with a pandemic. I also had the backing of the Democratic Party, and so the district covers pretty much like 90% of Chemung County, all of Tioga County, and the town of Maine and Broome County. So it's that's the 124th Assembly District. Now it may get, after the census, it may get redistrict, but that's where I was running.
Okay, so how did the pandemic affect how you went about campaigning?
Right. So typically, when you're campaigning, you're holding fundraisers, you're holding town hall events, going door knocking. All that was out the door. You really were advised against it just because of the pandemic and because of the way it spread, and everyone had to keep 6 feet apart. You really couldn't congregate, and you also had executive orders from the governor about the conduct during the race. Not saying it was so bad, but at one point when we were getting signatures to get onto the ballot, I needed over 500 signatures, but because they didn't want you going door to door, it was, I think, down to 25%. Whatever the number is, the minimum you needed to get onto the ballot was 125. So, but at the time, I ended up with still 900 signatures. Mm-hmm. So they wanted to curtail people going out on your behalf and getting signatures during the pandemic.
Okay. So what kind of fundraising events did you wind up doing if you couldn't do the big fundraising events you would normally do?
Everything was online. I did a campaign, a small campaign using an app. I had emails and things like that, texting. It was the way to do it, and it was called Give Butter. And so you do little small fundraisers like that. The Democratic Party at the time did a fundraiser for us. It was virtual. Everything was virtual. We did a cooking segment, my wife and I, and pretty much email blasts. And like I said, I actually had a fundraiser scheduled over at the old post office here at the Ill Eagle, but I had to cancel it because you weren't allowed to have more than 10 people or 25 people at the time.
Was any aspect of campaigning this time more effective than campaigning last time, or was it? How did it compare?
Yeah. Obviously before I could go out and meet, and I can go to people's homes. Before this time, you couldn't. I think it hampered me per se because I had to get my name out there, and I also then had to I was kind of well known. Not I should say well known, but I was kind of known in Chemung County. But I also had to get into Tioga County, which people really didn't know me other than me being on the ticket. So I had to run a lot of digital ads through Facebook and Google ads and things like that. And so so that was the difference where I could go and set up events. 2018, you couldn't do them in 2020, and so it kind of hampered me from getting out and being seen and talking to people. Even though people could still contact me on my website, but I mean, it's still it pays to see people in person.
Okay. In your campaign material, you mentioned that both you and your wife had COVID. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience of the disease?
Right. So I'll speak for my wife first. She had COVID in March, so this is around the early stages of COVID, and really it was also around the time when the governor was trying to take having orders because they were having major issues down in New York City, the ventilators. So my wife, I believe, got it mid-March, just before my birthday, actually. And so when she got it, it was advised to stay home and not actually go to the hospital. And so, there was one night that was actually pretty scary. It was a Saturday night. She was having trouble breathing. We had been in touch with her doctor, Dr. Michael Sillip, and he was great. He gave her, some advice, but he also really did not want her to go to the hospital. And so she remembered she's asthmatic, and so she remembered growing up using Vicks as the vapor rub. And so I had to call my son. He would happen to be out to go and get Vicks. And so he did that, brought it in. She put it on, and her breathing started to improve. Probably 10 minutes later, and then, she was almost to a point where I wasn't sure whether or not I had to take her to the hospital, just so it's clear. I was curious, am I going to have to carry her? Am I going to have to, call an ambulance? And so, but once she put the Vicks on and rubbed it on, her breathing improved. Mm-hmm. And then probably 20 minutes later, she was actually feeling a little bit better. Still not, able to get out of the bed or anything like that. But then she slept through the night and then woke up the next morning feeling a lot better, but still down from COVID, but not to the stage where she was going to be hospitalized. And so she got through her 3 or 4 days, and then she recovered. They had put her on steroids and things like that. And, at the time, people were like, "You didn't get it?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't get it." I said I had to stay with her. And so people were surprised that I didn't get it. And so that was in March. And so she recovers, fast forward to September. I'm in the throes of my campaign, and so it was around mid-September. I was thinking I had a sinus infection, and so I had taken a steroid that my doctor had given me because I thought it was a sinus infection. I was okay for maybe a day or two, but I just had this constant headache, and the headache went on for a number of days. Then I lost my smell and taste. And that was a key indicator for a lot of people who got COVID. You lose your sense of smell and taste. And so I lost that for, 2 or 3 days. And then I think I was becoming dehydrated. And so I really couldn't sleep. So I called my doctor, same doctor, Michael Sillip. So I called him. He called me back that evening and said, "I really want you to go to the emergency room." But at the time, I had just woken up, and I was like, "Well, Doc, I actually feel better. I just slept for an hour." He says, "Okay, I wanted to monitor it, but I really think you should go to the hospital." And so I hang up, I go get something to drink, and I fall. And my wife thinks I collapsed, but I fell, and I ended up on my back, and she was like, "That's it, you're going to the hospital." So we go to the hospital probably like 1 a.m, and I end up staying. They gave me a rapid test, and at the time, I had already taken 2 tests and to see if I had COVID, and the results hadn't come back yet. And so when I'm in the emergency room, they give me the rapid test, and it said that I had COVID. And so I was there for 2 nights. Had was on oxygen, which is another indicator that you have because your blood levels go down, and so I was on oxygen there, and I took steroids, and they gave me the drug that Remdesivir, which was a popular drug at the time, and I was so. One interesting thing is I had taken the Remdesivir the night before, woke up, I think it was that Friday morning, and it was around 7:30. I remember this, like, all of a sudden I could smell. I smelled the food from the Arnott Ogden Hospital come through the door, and I was like, and I had my appetite back. It was literally just like that. It's really weird. So yeah, but and so I went home. They discharged me later that evening, and I went home and recovered from there. But I lost 20 pounds in the process, and so it took me off the campaign trail for probably about a week or so, and then you also had to be conscious because, at the time, even now, just as I was getting out, people did not want to be around you. You can sense it because they knew that I had it. I ran into a friend of mine at Wegmans. Now I'm released. I get the medical release. I'm I don't have it. He didn't know I had it. We were just talking. He says, "How you doing?" I'm like, "Good." I said. He goes, "What you been up to?" I said, "Oh, you didn't know I was sick?" He goes, "No." I said, "I had COVID," and he jumps back. And, I believe he was one of those deniers that it wasn't real. And he kind of like jumped back, and I said, "What are you doing?" He goes, "Well, I don't want to catch it." I said, "Don't worry, you'll be fine." And so that was the interesting part about it is interacting with people after you had it. I'm saying immediately after you have it, after they heard that you had it and stuff like that. It was, you could sense it when you were talking to people. So.
Have you or your wife had any lingering effects from the COVID, or are you pretty much recovered by this point?
No, my wife is what they call a long hauler, but she's actually improved. She just had an appointment last week, but she's actually improved. She had scarring on her lungs from when she was sick in March, and so she had to do a couple of pulmonary treatments over the past 2 or 3 months to get her back. They adjusted some of her medicine, and she just literally I believe this week had improved to where the doctor was even surprised. So she was considered a long hauler just because she had the issues from her lungs, and so they're going to monitor it over the next year or so, but to see. But yeah, now me personally, I haven't. There's that thing called a COVID fog. My wife thinks sometimes she has it. I haven't really experienced it. Again, even my son, Cameron, he had it. He had COVID. He bounced back, but he's also a security guard at Arnott, so we're thinking that's where he got it. But so, yeah, there's, as I said, my wife is what they call a long hauler, but we'll see. It's so unknown right now. What the long-term issues are.
How else would you say COVID has affected you and your family?
Definitely we are aware of, where we go. I get antsy if I'm in a big crowd, just because I don't want to catch it again. And when you see people without masks, or we just had this Thanksgiving, and there were people. My family was going to have people over down in Maryland, and we decided not to go. We just weren't going to travel. But you could see, where people were gathering. They didn't care, and we could go into, and it's the same with my wife as well. I mean, we could go into a situation, or whether it's a store or wherever, and be like, nah, we're not going in there. And we just did that the other day. I can't remember where we were going, but we were getting out of the car. We looked, and we're like, nah, I'm not going in there. And so, that's the perception that that's kind of how it affects you now. Kind of like where you go, who you interact with, and whether or not people are masked, unmasked, and things like that. So.
Okay. Do you have anything you'd like to add about your COVID experience?
Other than, at this time, it was, a scary thing to have, and how, I shouldn't say how quickly it got over, but like I said, when I had the reaction of smelling again, and it just like turned back on, and it's like, it's really weird. And people were asking about it. I'm like, no, that's how it happened. And just with the numbers that we have in the county, I just saw them before I came over. We're spiking, and people aren't understanding, the depth of how just wearing a mask, can help everyone. So.
Okay. Well, thank you for speaking with me.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yep.